And also, the most importantly, start the multicast. And there we go.
Beautiful picture, Marta.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's go ahead and start things here. Welcome everyone to the People Strategy Forum podcast. And so we're a show that guides leaders on how to elevate the workforce. And we believe strongly that people are at the heart of successful organizations and that team members, their well-being, rewards, career development are essential to a happy, healthy, and highly productive workforce. So this show discusses the practical and effective leadership strategies for top executives, senior professionals, and talent managers overall. And so we have a lot of hosts here today, and I'm really excited to introduce our speaker. But first of all, I would like to introduce Sumit Singla. Sumit is an experienced HR consultant dedicating to helping small and medium-sized enterprises scale up globally with cutting-edge practices and solutions. And he has a diverse background in working at a lot of large consulting practices such as Accenture, Deloitte, Aon, and also at GE. And so Sumit brings a wealth of knowledge in delivering innovative HR practices across the globe. We also have Shar Miller, which she is a top-notch human resources consultant, business owner, and she one of her businesses, I call her a serial entrepreneur because she has businesses, several different operations going. One is she has Mountain and Sea Career Strategies, where she does her coaching business, and also Mountain and Sea Health Advocacy, where she helps people navigate the difficult landscape of our health system. So Shar has over 25 years of experience in helping individuals, and we're just happy to have her here. Also, we have Wendy Graham. She is a founder of Octopus 8 Consulting. Wendy is familiar to the TV screen, as she has a lot of hobbies, and also she's an anchor at the local news station. She's also a TMA expert, where she's helped organizations of all sizes reach new heights in improving and managing their talent practices. So thank you, Wendy, for joining us today. All right, and I'm also myself. I don't want to forget myself. My name is Sam Reeve. I am the founder of Comp Team, and I love helping companies put in that critical infrastructure for their compensation practice, making sure that they're paying people fairly and equitably, and help companies scale and grow, not only within the U.S. but across the globe myself, as well. So I'm pleased to introduce our guest today. So join me in welcoming the incredible Marta Spirk onto the People Strategy Forum. She has over 20 years of experience as a teacher, translator, an entrepreneur, interpreter. So Marta has been building a thriving six-figure empowerment marketing coaching business. And she also has a podcast, The Empowered Woman, which, Marta, I think you have almost 300 episodes, I believe. So
that's right.
You are a seasoned podcaster. So it's an honor to have you here. And you also have a book called The Empowered Woman, The Ultimate Roadmap to Business Success, and where it guides women into positioning themselves as authority in their fields. And then also you have the Empowered Woman School, providing action, inspiration, and support for women entrepreneurs. So thank you, Marta, for joining us today. I know that you have a very interesting background. You were born in Brazil, and can you just start with your journey on how you've gone through all of that to support? I mean, to basically to help support the people that you do today and your clients. So how'd that journey all start?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. It feels like lifetimes ago. I feel like I've lived many lifetimes in one. So yes, I was born and raised in Brazil. My mom is a pastor, and from a young age, she started getting mentorship from American ministers, at the point where she started her own community and her own church and started hosting these American ministers. And being the little extrovert that I am, I wanted to be involved in some capacity. And obviously in Brazil, it's beyond school people take private English classes. That's just very common to add to your CV, you know, professional experience and things like that. You know, you take English throughout school and even in college, depending on the major that you have. So it was like celebrities for me, right? Seeing an American in person when you only see them in movies, you know, it was just such an amazing opportunity to be able to communicate with these people and understand what they were saying, and also to be recognized by them as this prodigy child that could speak so well and, you know, whatever. And it was in that church environment that I started developing my translation capabilities and interpreting capabilities, because soon then, you know, it was recognized, you're really good at this. Can you start helping out? And by the time I was 18, I was the official interpreter for conferences of like 1,000 people that my mom would put together. So things started growing. We started coming to America to that same pastor's church conferences as well. So it was like full-blown immersion, right, in the American culture, but in a very different way than many people would have, like going to Disney or vacationing. I was attending these church conferences in Oklahoma for several years. And that's how I met my husband, was in one of these conferences. So it was kind of like, you know, what are you going to do? A long distance relationship. It's not like we're a few miles apart. It was, you know, a continent apart of sorts. So eventually we decided to get married. He was living in Colorado at the time. He's from Nebraska. And I got married and I moved up here, but I was still following the path of languages. So I got my bachelor's in translation. I also learned French at the time. So I speak English, Portuguese, and French. And then I got my master's here at UC Denver at the time. We decided to move back to Brazil. And that's when I was like, all right, it's time to, you know, start a family. We've been married for a few years. And then I had the surprise of a triplet pregnancy that was quite the plot twist in my life, but it was the plot twist that put me in this path right now, because my path was, you're the languages person. Like, that's what I was known as. You can interpret, you can speak, you know, you can understand, you can translate. But I, in some capacity, knew that that was not the end of the road for me. Like, that's not what I was going to stay, because the church environment really put in my heart this desire to be in front of people. And I was in front of people in the capacity of an interpreter, because when you think conference interpreter, you are invisible. You're in a booth. Nobody knows. Only the people that need interpretation are wearing the headset and they hear your voice, but nobody knows who that is. And with my extroverted personality, I needed a little bit more than that. So that's where having kids helped me realize that there was more for me to do than just be the voice. And then I started, you know, hosting my own events, starting my own coaching, and here I am now.
Well, I have to say this because Marta, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that you're multilingual. And I'm not going to go into my entire story, but I do live part-time in Mexico and part-time in United States. And I went to an HOA meeting, and because my neighbors are dragging me there. I was trying to walk to the beach and they were like dragging my arm, like, Shar, you got to go to this HOA meeting. And when I went into the Palapa where the HOA meeting was, there was a booth there with a translator. And a big percentage of this, you know, HOA meeting, it was to have equal voices. This is a very multicultural community. We have Germans, we have Swedish, we have Mexicans, we have USA, we have lots of Canadians, French. And so it was fascinating because as we had the little microphone in my ear, I was like listening, going, wait a minute. So even our community in here in Mexico, Puerto Vallarta, we are not even paying our employees up to the law. So Sam, you'd be interested in this. But I found it very valuable, Marta, that you actually offered those bilingual translation skills, because even in communities like Puerto Vallarta, I couldn't believe myself. I stood up about 2 or 3 times, you know, because everyone knows I have a big mouth. And I was like, excuse me, everyone, and they were translating this in Spanish. We have to assure that we are following the law to assure that our employees are being paid equitably and assuring they're being paid by the law. So I find what you're saying very interesting, because I think this is, now we're going more and more global as USA of A people. We are going more and more global, and also trying to be more vocal to say, how do you translate and also speak for that community to make sure that the employees are being well taken care of? So
Mhm.
I'll just stop talking. I just wanted to kind of make a
Very,
comment.
but I think that's really good, Shar. I mean, as much as I like to talk about compensation, I mean, it is important to ensure that people are treated fairly and equitably. But one thing I wanted to go back and just revisit a little bit about what Marta said is triplets. Now, I love children, and especially in those little babies, and they're just I just miss those days when my kids were that age. You know, it was a lot of fun, but I can't imagine the amount of a life-changing event to being responsible from zero to
Right.
3 human beings overnight.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how this impacted your life, and perhaps this also gave you perspective on what you wanted to do in helping other women leaders. So can you tell us a little bit about that journey?
Yeah, it definitely created a perspective shift for me that I'm still unpacking 7 years later, honestly. Like it's a life, lifelong thing. But I guess the first realization came with me seeing the impossible situation that I found myself in. Like, how am I going to give these kids the attention that they need and deserve when I'm just one, and this is my first go round at this. And then simultaneously with all of that, I started diving into more personal development and things, which was something that I feel like I missed, going the church route of looking at myself and understanding my individuality, because the focus was more so on having someone or a mediator, right? Or even the role of my mom to kind of help guide me. But now I find myself as an adult living in a different country and having children, because we had the kids in Brazil and then we moved back. So it was a lot happening at the same time. And so I was like, well, I'm kind of on my own here, spending the entire day by myself with 3 babies, away from family, multiple capacity, because my husband's family is not local either. So I kind of started diving into myself more and seeing if I can understand me better, then I can be more intentional about who I am, so that that's what they're getting, because they're going to get who I am regardless. So what if I'm paying closer attention to what that is? Then that was my thought process, which is exactly what I'm going to be sharing here today in terms of, the work environment and all of that. But it started with my little team, right? I am leading this team, this team of 3 here. And I started understanding, my gosh, in order for me to see them for who they are, because that's the other challenge with multiples, is you see them as this entity, right? We went to the doctor's appointments all together. When they asked me, what does she, what does he, it was like they do this because everything is like assembly line. I can't cater to their interests at this point. They get what they get because that's what I can do as one person. Obviously now that they're older and that they have some independence to get their stuff or to voice, because that's something else with babies, they can't tell you. It is a little bit different, and I see their individuality, but right off the bat, I couldn't. And so that's where it all started for me, was wow. And the flip side of it was, why can't I just be content with the fact of being this homemaker, housewife? Like right in the beginning, I realized that that's not what I wanted to do, which was a point of contention with my family as well. It's like, this is what happens. You have babies, you stay home, unless you want to go the teaching route because that's your degree. So we had all these conversations, right? And it's like, no, I don't want to do anything with languages for now. So what are you doing, Marta? So it was tough because I didn't know. All I knew was I don't want to teach English private classes anymore, because that's what I had known, and do freelance interpreting, which, by the way, I still do freelance interpreting, because that's, I've come to realize that it's a lot more valued in the United States than it is in Brazil, because Portuguese is a commodity language as opposed to English in Brazil, where everybody speaks it, So anyways, that's how it all started. It started with me. Like, my whole business is a reflection of my own journey. And as people see the different things that I have accomplished and how far I've come, especially because of my background of not being from here, right? Like, if there's any testament of you can do anything, it starts with somebody that doesn't even have their family here. And I've been pursuing these things, and it's been working out for me with many obstacles. Obviously, it hasn't been smooth, but that then transitioned into, hey, look at me. I have triplets. This is not my background. I didn't go to school for marketing and publicity. Like, that's not it. I just put myself in these positions, and I've been able to achieve these things because there's something particular about me where I'm very persistent and very stubborn. That's how I got here, So, and then starting to help women see what makes them different and where they can use that persistence to pursue what they actually want as they're figuring out what that is.
Yeah. Well, one thing, I think that as an entrepreneur like yourself, I mean, you have a sense of control. What women are experiencing right now in the workforce is there's a lot of companies that are demanding that they come back into the office from being in that hybrid environment or being fully remote. And a lot of women are feeling that they have to make a choice. Do I choose the removing this flexibility that I've enjoyed with my family, the bonding that I've received and so forth, or do I choose the career? And you are, in a sense, have found a way to balance both those pieces. I mean, I know that being an entrepreneur, you have a little bit more flexibility.
Yeah.
But how do you coach the women that you you guide on a daily basis on how to have both the family and the career that they desire so much?
Well, it all starts with that self-awareness in order to have better communication so that you can have those hard conversations. And that's something that, again, lifelong mastering, obviously depending on your personality type as well. So I speak for myself when I say it's been a learning process. Even though I am outspoken, there is, some people pleasing element there where I'd rather avoid the tough conversations and just kind of, see where it takes me until it kind of explodes. Whereas other people are okay with initiating, right? But then there's the repercussions of that depending on who they're talking to. But regardless, that is what I help women with, is in order for you to get what you want, right? It's not just about getting clear on what exactly it is that you want, is how can you partner up with the people around you? Because sure, you can go over people to get what you want, but that doesn't say much about the support that you're going to get along the way, or even after you get them. Don't they say it's lonely at the top? It's lonely at the top only if you didn't take the time to build those relationships as you're going for what you want. And that has been part of the learning process for me, because I am very much so like, if you're not going to be with me, then don't stand in my way. So now I've also been learning the art of, I can't do this on my own. I'm not going to be able to advocate for myself if I don't have the support from my family or, from my clients. I need to be willing to listen to what they have to say. So I guess it's really mastering the art of, it goes both ways, right? The golden rule, do unto others as you would want, people to do unto you. It really is the name of the game. And some people kind of tip towards just do whatever you want and I'll sit here and deal with it. Or, I'll do whatever I want and you can sit here. And neither of those scenarios benefit if it's not a win-win. So how do we find that balance of let me compromise a little bit so that you can get what you want to, and this is in any relationship, right? Whether
Mhm.
you're, because that's something else that I say with all the marketing work that I do, we're all salespeople. We're all selling something, whether it is vegetables to your kids, you know, eating out to your husband because you don't want to cook tonight,
Mm.
or a raise. We're all selling something. So how do you go about that without manipulation? Is you understand their side.
For sure. So let's just think about that a little bit more. So you mentioned that first step is know thyself, right?
Mhm.
And then identify your support group that's going to help you succeed, whether that's your coaches, your clients, your colleagues. And
Yeah.
then the next is be an advocate for yourself. And so let's jump back into the know yourself piece. And so I know that Wendy is right here is a TMA practitioner, which TMA is one of those psychometric tools that can help a person understand their talents and so forth. And both Shar and Sumit are practitioners in that. But I know that you have your very own tool and that you help your clients with. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Sorry, Marta, can you hear me?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought
Oh,
you were asking Wendy. I'm so
oh
sorry.
no.
I thought
So
you were asking
Marta,
Wendy.
I would love to hear about that, about your tool that you've created. So as I understood, we were talking about previously,
Yeah.
you started off using a off the shelf tool, and then you felt like that there's that you could simplify it a bit to better resonate with your clients.
Yeah, correct. And sorry about that. I was totally not following the train of thought. Yeah. So initially what helped me in my journey was the Enneagram. And that is when I really saw myself, because in that transition period of starting, these ideas of that's not really what I want to do. I want to do something else. I don't know exactly what it is. Well, why do I even want to do anything when I have 3 kids depending on me? Am I crazy? Then I found this tool that pretty much told me, you're not crazy. You are just wired to always want something else. Like that's how you operate, and other people are not. So what do I do with this? So it's like revelation moment. And then being like, well, darn it, that must mean there are other people like me out there. And that must mean there are other people in the different personality types that see me as this crazy human, or that see me as this inspiring human. That's like, I wish I had your drive, right? Because I've gotten all of the different responses throughout the years, like, oh my gosh, you're an inspiration, you're a superwoman, you might as well wear a cape. And then there are the other ones that are like, girl, you need to go take care of your kids, right? You need to be empowering the little children and not the grown women, So it's like, well, what is it? Which one is it? So, and that was all the revelation with the Enneagram. But then through the years and using the Enneagram, I started seeing that there were some people that were not as excited about my discoveries with the Enneagram as I was, which again can be explained by personality types too. And I decided to simplify the process because it's a whole, like, you dedicate your life to studying it. Essentially, it's, psychology. Why do they think this way? Some people don't care why others think that way. And that's why they may find themselves in sticky relationship situations, because they're not willing to put themselves in other people's shoes. But I digress. So I simplified the 9 Enneagram types to 3 types, which is one of the different ways you can group the 9 types, is in these 3 ways, which is looking into their stances. So I developed a quiz. It's a very simple quiz, so a lot simpler than going down the Enneagram rabbit hole. That's called What's Your 6-Figure Personality? And I grouped the types into feelers, thinkers, and doers. And that really helps to help women really normalize how they operate. Right. So essentially you take the quiz and you're like, this is your characteristics, and they feel so seen. Wow, I'm not broken, or I'm not this alien. There are other people out there that behave exactly the way that I do. And then I say, and this is how, with these characteristics, when they tip over the exacerbated side of the scale, you can get into trouble, because then people, they either take advantage of you, depending on the type, because you're more passive, or you trump over people and they're resentful for you, depending on the personality type. So there's these different areas, or you're more analytical and you just stand there and you don't take action. So then life passes you by, right? So I walk them through all of these scenarios, and I say, now, what do you do about this? First, you're gaining the awareness because you're here. That's great. Now you need to start paying attention to these patterns in your daily life and start making more empowered decisions that challenge the autopilot, right? So when we're talking about identifying your support group, it's not only finding people that think like you so that you can feel more normal, because oftentimes we surround ourselves with people that are opposites. That's the challenging, which is good too, right? So if you're a doer and you're always taking action, you need a feeler and a thinker next to you to be like, whoa, 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 slow down. Let's think about this and not be so impulsive. That's important, right? But not to be like them, but to just balance yourself out.
So can leaders use this strategy with their teams and so forth?
Yes, absolutely. Because even though my focus is in entrepreneurs and being like, what is going to help you get to 6 figures is understanding you already are this person, you're just unaware, right? So the same thing goes for another goal. If it is to be, you know, hitting your sales goals or whatever, you know, that team or that specific individual is aiming towards, is helping them see you already have the potential, you already have what it takes to achieve this goal or to, you know, rise above in that capacity. What's lacking here is knowing how to work with yourself and the team knowing how to work with you. That's what it is. So it's just, it goes back to that awareness, right? We spend so much of our lives trying to be somebody else to fit a specific thing, right? I heard a talk not too long ago that says we go our entire lives thinking, what can I do to not get in trouble? That's how we live, right? So it's not about how can I be more of myself, is what can I do? That's the goal, right? I don't want my parents to put me, to ground me. I don't want to get bad grades in school. I don't want to, you know, get fired. So you're just doing those things with a completely different goal in mind, is I don't want to get in trouble. What if the opposite was, how can I be more of myself, right? Because people are going to benefit from that. They don't want you to just sit down and listen or to just, you know, whatever the personality is. But yeah, this would absolutely help anybody with any goal, because the focus is, I want you to recognize your gifts and use your gifts to contribute with your uniqueness.
So the next piece that you mentioned was that I'd like to dig into a little bit more is identifying your support group.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, and I think that this is probably another area that we could apply to the team as well, and ensuring, because when companies first started going down the employee-centric journey,
Mm-hmm.
Some companies were reaching out even to ensure that their the spouses of or partners of certain employees were supported. You know, if there's a relocation, or if they're the partner had to be away for work for a period of time, you know, they're, you know, so having certain benefits that supply the family as a whole. So when you think about having the support group overall, how do you consult your leaders on taking care of those different areas, family and work and spiritual and those different areas, identifying those people to help them?
Well, I think it also has to do with helping them see that everything is interconnected, right? What happens at work affects home. What happens home affects work. Your relationship with yourself affects all of the other relationships. And that's why I believe that's the starting point to everything. Or even if you want to look into spirituality, right? Your relationship with something bigger than you affects the way you go about life and your connection to a purpose and why you're here to begin with. So is really looking at people from a holistic perspective, not just focusing on, are they helping me get to the whatever company goal we have, right? Am I helping them help us, right, in achieving this goal? Because oftentimes, and I see this even with entrepreneurship, and I call myself out on this as well, is we become a slave to our career, right? Where everything comes second, right? I have this important call, I have this meeting, I have this email, this client just called me. What if it was the opposite, right? I have this life and then I have the job, right? Or even if they were balanced too, right? Creating something that everything contributes to each other. It's not this one major thing that's at the top, because I have struggled with that in terms of the family too, and even in conversations / arguments with my husband of like, family is not a priority for you. your business is. And it's like, well, it's a matter of perspective, because this really fulfills me. And it's almost like, this is my life. This is who I am. It's not just my title. My identity is the person that does these things. And I do this with whoever it is that I'm talking. Like, I'm coaching my kids and they're trying to ride a bike without their training wheels and telling themselves, maybe this is not for me. And I told one of my sons, it's like, the more you say that to yourself, the more you're going to fall, because that's what you're believing in. It goes all ways, right? It's all the same thing. And something else that's helped me really put this into perspective is understanding that, in a way, even though I have shifted how I do things because I own my own business now and it's not language focused, I am doing something very similar because I'm still teaching people. It's just a different subject matter, and the audience is a little bit different. And that's when I know I'm doing what I'm meant to do. Because even if I scrapped everything and I said, I'm moving to Africa to do some mission work, I can guarantee you, and I see this now, and this goes for everybody, if you put me there, I will find a way of creating a little group and teaching somebody something. You know what I mean? Like, I can't take this away from me. I was born to do this, So the same thing goes for companies and their teams. Like, what is this person meant to do, right? And getting to that really core of it, helping them find it, because isn't that why we're here anyways in this life, is what makes me me. And I know that having triplets really sparked all of this for me to be like, how can I help them find what makes them them when they are this entity in my eyes right now? Well, I have to find what makes me me first. So then I will be role modeling that to them,
Mm-hmm. Well, Marta, I have to interject here because my first daughter was born in 2000, which ages me a little bit. So she's 23. And my second son, can you guys all hear me? Because I know I've had internet problems. Okay. My second son was born in 2003. And what was amazing, that my leader, I was still there about 6:30 that night in my office. My span of control was crazy in HR. So this is an HR position. And she came into my office and she goes, "What are you still doing here?" She says, "You have a baby at home and you're expecting your second child." So it's somewhere, like in it was like right before my second son was born. And she's like, "I think you need to look about working smarter, not so harder." Which I kind of took offense to that, because I was like, I thought I was showing you that I'm working harder.
Yeah.
And she said, "Believe me." And by the way, this woman never had children. So she said, "Believe me, you will thank me later that I put this in your brain about your how you're taking care of your current child, and your second child's coming on the way." And then when I had my second son, my work just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I really should have stopped and just said, "Okay, I don't need to get a master's degree right now. I don't need this massive promotion right now." And really just stopped and really thought about my priorities with my family life and my children. As by the way, as we were driving into my job, my ex-husband dropped me off because we worked at a hospital. He dropped me off at the hospital because I was gonna have my baby that day. And it was the HR manager meeting. So the entire HR management group came to welcome the baby during an HR manager meeting. It was pretty funny. Like, "Hello, HR team," because I worked in a hospital. They all welcomed my son and me. Anyway, my point is, I love what you're saying, because I think that we really need to step back and really think about the amount of time we're working, the amount of time we're spending with our family, and how can we work smarter, not harder. And my view is, and I'm going to stop talking because I talk too much. my view is like what Sam and the team have been talking about. We have these new technologies like AI coming into place. And to me, I feel that if we can help our employees work smarter, not harder, they will have more life balance to spend more time with their small children, their elderly parents, and utilize the technology so that we're not making constant spreadsheets and constant
Mhm.
PowerPoints and everything I grew up with in my career. I spent way too much time doing all that stuff instead of spending quality time with my family. So just off of what I just said, what do you think about what I just said?
No, I completely agree. And that has been one of my goals through building my business too, is learn myself how to work smarter and not harder, because working hard is pretty much what I know. It's like, if this is going to lead me to that, I am going to do it, and I'm going to do it now. I'm not going to wait until tomorrow. I'm going to do it, spend the night awake. And that's part of my personality, because there's that intensity factor there, but that's not always how we achieve things. So that's the part that I'm learning. And when you're talking about, spending time with family and finding that balance, but then the trick to the smarter, not harder is, what does that mean to you? Right? Because the way you go about it may be different from the way that I go about it. Right? Maybe it's setting those boundaries with other people. Whereas for me, is I have to set boundaries for myself. Right? And for others, it may be they're taking advantage of me. I don't know how to say no. Right? So, and that's where the personalities would come in, because I think all of us would say yes to working smarter and not harder. But what does that look like? I can't tell you, because you have to, figure it out for yourself as you understand your unique situation.
Well, I'd love for Sumit to bring in his perspective, because he's got a child, he's got a lovely wife, and he's got a cat. What do you think about this, Sumit?
3 cats and a dog, Shar. So
I'm wrong. I don't know you very well. Sorry. I'm kidding.
yes, it's only one of them who makes a frequent appearance on the keyboard. Maybe that's why you've only seen one of the cats. But I was thinking about 2 things. So I did read through your book as well, Marta, and I think the most interesting chapter I found was about forgiving yourself. So there's a lot of literature on leaning in, empowering yourself, taking charge, doing a lot of things. I think one of the aspects that women are not allowed to do by society and by all of us is forgiving themselves. So you just can't afford to drop the ball. You're always an employee or a parent or a partner or something or the other. So I think that's important learning. That's one. Second, while Shar was talking about working smarter and not harder and the use of AI, so just this evening I was using an AI tool I was just messing around with it and saying, I gave it some parameters and said, I'd like to generate a picture of the CEO of a medium-sized company. So at one point of time, it generates 4 images. All of the 4 images were of white men, probably in their early 40s. And I think that was insightful. So I was actually trying to create a poster for a gender diversity and inclusion initiative. And I think while we are focusing on working smarter, we need to focus on that inclusion angle as well, and make sure that we have the right voices in there. And I think that's where the empowerment aspect you're talking about will help, because right now I think AI is a field that's dominated by people of my gender, and that kind of magnifies the biases instead of eliminating them.
Mm.
So would love to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, no, those are such great points. And thank you for reading through the book and mentioning the forgive yourself.
Oh, it was a pleasure.
It's very interesting how all of this came about with how I organized the different steps in my framework and put the book together, because the focus has always been empowerment. But then through my own journey, I realized it doesn't start there. There are things you need to do before. And one of them being, you need to forgive yourself. As you start uncovering these things about yourself, like I did about me, because that was my personal journey. Like, wow, there's nothing wrong with me. I actually am this super driven person. No one can stop me. And I shouldn't stop myself because I'm actually getting lots of things done, you know, and inspiring other people. But there's still a part of me that feels wrong, you know, and that's where that forgiveness comes in, or even forgiveness for others too, that see me as this wrong person or doing something wrong because I should be fitting this other ideal of, you know, wife, of mom, or whatever it may be. So that is a very important step as well. And when you're talking about inclusion, what's so interesting is I help people apply for TEDx's because I am a TEDx speaker. And that's part of my coaching and visibility is helping women land, especially women, land TEDx opportunities. And I was just coaching a client this morning who is neurodivergent, who discovered recently that she is in the gifted spectrum. And she's wanting to help women understand if they are gifted, because many people as adults, so that is some of the discrepancy too, is when you think gifted, first thing comes to mind, high school programs, right? Let me help foster this child that needs challenges because everything's so easy for them and they catch on quickly. But this doesn't go away. They go on to become adults and be put into the box of you just be this employee and do this thing, but they don't think that way, you know? So she is focusing on neurodivergence, and there's lots of different, you know, different ways of identifying people, not just that, but I remember that. And it goes back to that awareness, right? It's that personal awareness of yourself, because this woman has been working with that population for 13 years, but she didn't find herself to be in that population until a year ago. And that's why she's like, I need to talk about this, you know? So how many of us, just like myself, right? I wasn't diagnosed on any spectrum, but I identified myself as this extremely driven person. People could have told me that. They had, you know, like, you have triplets. There you go. God knew. You could take care of it. You know, you do all the things. And it's like, that doesn't do anything for me. You telling me that, because I don't see myself as this superpower powerhouse. I just want to crawl in a hole and cry because I don't know what to do with what's going on, you know? So it really goes both ways. It's like, it's starting with yourself so that you can advocate, but then the other people, the leaders, need to be doing something similar to then see, oh, wow, they behave differently. They're not like me. How can I bridge that gap and create? So when we're talking about diversity and inclusion in companies, it's the same conversation, honestly, right? Is helping them understand themselves and helping us understand them. But I have to understand where I fall as well.
Thank you.
Marta, just a little tangent there on the end of what you were saying is like, yes, you're driven. Yes, you can handle those 3 babies. And at what point do you get to not have to hold up the sky? You know what I mean? And I mean, I think that's where your support system comes in, but also that thing like we're not allowed to ask for help. We're just, there's so much going on right by society that, you know, well, yeah, I was like built for this. So, you know, I have to do it. But it's at what point do you also just get to have, like, you know, when do you get tired of hearing like, you're strong, you got this.
Right. And then that permission to, and you can also fall apart. Right. And that is one of the things that when I'm teaching marketing, I tell women all the time, I don't know how comfortable you are with this, because again, it depends on your personality type / how self-aware you are. But the more you're able to be vulnerable and say, I argue with my husband, I cry in front of my computer sometimes. Some days I feel like I suck, even though the money's coming in and people are liking my posts, you know. We need to be saying this more, right? And in any context, not just my context of being entrepreneurs, but what if your boss, you know, came up and said, hey, I get anxiety as well, right? I am freaking out about this client myself, right? It's that open communication too, because if you already know that that person has those inclinations or whatever it is, and you humanize yourself as well as a leader. But you can only do that though, if you are so self-aware and self-forgiving as well, because then you may be saying, what does that say about me if I go on and say I'm crying in the bathroom some days? You know, they're not going to respect me anymore. And it's quite the opposite, because aren't we inspired by people that fail as well? Because then it's like, there's hope for me. If this person is at the top of the company, right, and they still struggle, that means I have the permission to struggle too, and I can still grow.
I think that's an important insight. And on a lighter note, so my 5-year-old daughter, she came running into my room a couple of days ago and said, "I need to tell you something really important." I said, "Fine, what is it?" And she says, "Do you know men can cry too?" I said, "Yes, that's true. And how did you discover it?" And it was in one of the cartoons she watches. So Peppa Pig, they said stuff about how it's not only, I mean, women who cry, and it's perfectly fine for a man to cry as well. So I think that's, I mean, drawing from what you were saying, I think inclusion, the journey towards inclusion is, the good thing is it's starting at an early age. And I think children are learning the right things from the right places as well. And in particular, the show that I mentioned, they do have same gender, same sex parents. They do have people from different races in the class, etc. So they're kind of building that inclusive kind of a setup. So that's encouraging to hear.
That's a great story, Sumit. Well, I know we are coming towards the top of the hour, so I do want to share our next week's speaker. We do have Eric Fisher is going to be joining us, and he's going to be talking about productivity beyond the to-do list. And you know, Marta, I know that you do a lot of coaching around productivity with your leaders, making sure that they're effective and so forth. So what question would you have for Eric?
Well, I guess I would follow the same thought process that we've been unpacking here about personalities, right? Because when I look at a to-do list from a doer perspective, which is where I fall in my own quiz, it does look very different from a thinker or a feeler, right? How I tackle it is going to be different, which means while all 3 types can be very productive, they're not going to go about it the same way. And maybe what is a smarter, or, you know, when we're talking about working smarter and not harder, what is a smarter way for each of these types to work with? Obviously, Eric doesn't need to know about my 3 types, but the focus being, how can we make sure, and even thinking about inclusion, that we are taking into account the fact that not everybody's going to be the same when it comes to their to-do list and how they you know, go through it and tackle the items. So how can their individuality be taken into account, perhaps?
Yes, perfect. And so I'm inspired by your book, and so how can people learn more about where to find your book, and also to learn more about the training that you have?
Yeah, so you can find my book on Amazon. I also have an Audible version for those that prefer listening on the go instead of sitting down and reading. It's on Kindle, it's on paperback. I do also can mail signed copies shipped directly from me. So if that's interesting, just go to my website, martaspirk.com, and all the information on my programs, the different types of coaching that I offer is on my website. But I'm also happy to connect individually. I'm present on all the major social media platforms. So I'm social. So please connect with me, send me a message. I'm happy to connect, just have a conversation, you know, point you in the right direction. But yeah.
Hey, Marta, we have just a comment from the chat that I wanted to be sure to bring forward. And thank you to everybody who joined us live today. It's so great when we have you on and get to hear your feedback. So if you have any questions, we still have time for Marta to answer any of those. But Samia said, "This is insightful. I'm also driven and people rely on me, but sometimes I need a timeout. I just need a timeout." Yeah. So I wanted to be sure to share that. So thank you so much.
All right. Well, it's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, Marta, for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, take care, and we'll see everybody next week on the People Strategy Forum.
Yes.
Bye, everyone.
Nice to
Bye.
See
Thank
you,
you.
Marta. I'm glad we're so close. All right, bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.